For over 2 years now, I've been calling on the president to develop an overarching strategy to deal with this growing terrorist threat.
For nearly 1 year, we've been asking for the Congress to take up the authorization of the use of military force.
It's the president's responsibility to wage this battle.
The Speaker said no, he wasn't going to do it before the election, and we'd have to wait. And then we had to wait because he said it has to be an initiative. The president should put something on the table. The president did.
And the president, in my view, is not taking this threat as seriously as it should.
I don't know really what's different about what the Speaker said. He said the president should put something on the table. The president did.
Who to believe in that scenario? Back and forth between Speaker John Boehner and Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi. Boehner called upon the president to submit a new ISIS war plan for authorizing military force. Nancy Pelosi pretty much said, okay, well, the president did that. The ball's in your court, requesting this same authorization for use of military force for the president, a debate that hasn't really happened that much in Congress, and that's a great place to start our roundtable. We continue now with John Gizzi, chief political columnist for Newsmax, and the attorney and former general counsel to the Democratic Party of Virginia, Stephen Cobb. And Stephen, we'll give you the first go at this as we get started here. Who really should be the one taking the lead on presenting a new plan to fight ISIS?
Well, I think part of the problem here is the passing of the buck back and forth. There's blame to go around here. As my United States Senator Tim Kaine has been pointing out, he's been one of the major advocates of this. Congress can't wait for the White House, and the White House shouldn't be waiting for Congress. This is something that they should be going at in tandem. The White House put forward its plan for the authorization of force back in February, and it hasn't gotten a hearing yet in the Senate. So this is something that Congress needs to act on. It's Congress's prerogative to pass such legislation, and they need to get it together, have hearings. If they don't like the language of it, then that is the precise purpose of having those hearings, and roll those shirt sleeves up and get to work.
Meantime, we're talking about hearings, John, but we look at ISIS gaining new territory. It seems like this should be one of those cases where the commander-in-chief maybe want to go down, or go up, I should say, Capitol Hill and sit down with these congressional leaders, at least to make it look like he is not paralyzed by inaction on this issue.
This is just the latest example of what a lot of old hands on Capitol Hill have been talking about for years, members of Congress as well as those who cover Congress and the White House, namely that the president has never built the kind of relationship with members of Congress that would have made a debate like this out of the question and led to enactment for the authorization of the use of force weeks, perhaps months ago. He does not sit down early on with members of Congress from his own party, let alone the opposition, and say, this is what we would like to do down the line. Bill Clinton was a master at it, bringing in disparate views, talking an issue out, and going in united. And he governed with bipartisan support, notably at a time when Republicans controlled the House and the Senate, as they do now. I think that President Obama could learn a lesson or two from the last Democratic occupant in the White House.
And Stephen, why doesn't he do that?
Well,
Ask
one,
him.
I always love hearing great things about President Clinton. But again, one of the things we're focusing on here is that the administration has put forward its own bit of legislation. Now that the job is on Congress to get in there and have these hearings and have these discussions. That part has been completely missing. So I'm not really sure when John talks about, well, the Obama administration should have reached out earlier. Well, they've put forward a plan, and there's been no discussion on it.
Right.
That is the next step. That is the next step of the process, and Congress has failed to move forward.
Well, let's talk about that. Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi talked about the administration's current strategy to defeat ISIS over the weekend on MSNBC's Taking the Hill. Let's take a listen to what she had to say, and I want to get your reaction, Stephen and John.
But do you think the strategy's working, and what else do you think needs to be done?
Well, it's an enormous challenge, and we have to fight it on every front, including the front of social media. That is a place where they have really made more advances than you would have suspected, and that is where we have to fight them as well.
All right, so just to reiterate what Nancy Pelosi just stated social media is a front, where she says ISIS has made more advances than one would have expected. Do you think that they're ever going to come with a resolution, come together, Congress and the president, to find some logical plan to defeat ISIS, Stephen?
I think that
Yes,
is
I
the
do.
that is the universal hope, and I think Tim Kaine and John McCain are leading that charge in the United States Senate. They're gonna, hopefully they will come to some agreed upon language and put it forward so that we can move forward and defeat ISIS.
John, you were just saying yes?
Yes, I do, and I think the very fact that one has Democrat Kaine and Republican McCain at least talking together on something like this tells me something will be in the works. But again, I submit to you that when the administration comes,
John, we got to
with a
run.
plan,
We're out of time. We're going to a commercial break.
that's fait accompli.
We'll
That's
continue
not
the-
good politics.
Thank you, John. All right, back for part two of our roundtable is attorney and former general counsel to the Democratic Party of Virginia, Stephen Cobb, and chief political columnist for Newsmax and chief political White House, or just White House correspondent, I should say.
That works.
John
He has so many titles,
Gizzi.
right?
So many titles and a very, very deep Rolodex as well. John, you were just talking about Senator John McCain looking at a competition next year for his Senate seat. The five-term senator is being challenged by Arizona Representative Ann Kirkpatrick. What do you think about this? Is McCain vulnerable, John, in this election cycle?
No. As a matter of fact, I was talking to Randy Pullen, the former Republican chairman of Arizona, just yesterday, who said he felt that Ann Kirkpatrick was going to lose in 2016, and by announcing for the Senate, she confirmed it. Look, John McCain has been on the political scene in Arizona for more than 3 decades. Next year will be his 30th year in the Senate. He's part of the desert out there, and even people who get angry at him for some of his maverick stands nonetheless end up voting for him in a November election. He has not had a serious challenge from a Democrat since he won his first term in 1986. And that Democrat was serious because he had the same name of a popular TV character, Richard Kimball, the fugitive. Congressman Kirkpatrick was facing, if the district lines are redrawn, the annihilation of her district, if not certain defeat. This way she goes up or out for sure. This is her swan song. So my guess is John McCain will win by his usual large margin, and Ann Kirkpatrick will be elected to retire.
A footnote, maybe, perhaps, Stephen, what do you say?
Well, there's 2 important polls that were done this May by public policy polling in Arizona that I think will shed some light on this. The first was showing that if John McCain is primaried from his right, he could have a serious problem. The second poll showing that Hillary Clinton is within the margin of error, either slightly ahead or slightly behind pretty much all of the Republican candidates in Arizona. So if John McCain can get past a primary challenge, in order for any challenger, any Democratic challenger to his incumbency, Hillary Clinton's going to have coattails in Arizona. And it looks like right now there is the potential for that to happen. It's too early to tell, but I think it's far too early to write this one off as a sure thing win for John McCain. And it has all the makings of a potential battleground state, both for the presidential and for U.S. Senate.
It better be very long coattails, more like a wedding train than coattails, if that's going to happen. But let's move on to our next topic.
All right, let's talk about the Patriot Act, guys, if we can. It's set to expire at the end of the month. Let's listen to what the president had to say about it.
The Senate did not act. And the problem we have now is that those authorities run out at midnight on Sunday. So I strongly urge the Senate to work through this recess and make sure that they identify a way to get this done.
So there you heard it, the president kind of scolding the Senate there. John, do you think this will help? This is a plea for help, I mean?
Well, I think what would help more, and I hate to keep harping on this, but I did bring it up with Josh Earnest at the White House, is the president should be working the phones himself with members of the Senate and using a carrot more than a stick to get them to take action on it. There's only a dispute over one particular portion of the Patriot Act, and that's the one that involves bulk collection of data. It's in response to a ruling from the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. If they can get that resolved, then the Patriot Act is reauthorized, but that one section's been a stumbling block. My guess is, yes, they will work something out in some form, but it's going to take a little bit more tender loving care on the side of the executive office toward the legislative branch.
So lots of carrots, maybe a little honey to add to that.
Well, the thing I
Stephen,
don't
what do you
understand, the
think?
president seems willing to do so much when it comes to immigration in terms of kind of sidestepping the Constitution.
Yeah.
If there really is a national security interest, and he knows better than anybody because he gets the most classified information, if there really is a national security interest, don't you think that he would sign some sort of executive order, Stephen, to keep this part of the Patriot Act in place if it's really that big of a concern?
Well, two things. I reject the premise that you said that he's avoided the Constitution on
Well, you don't have to take it from
immigration
me, but you can take it from an appeals court, 3 or 2 judges at least in New Orleans.
Well, we can debate that happily, but that's on the Administrative Process Act, and that's not based on constitutionality. But the second thing is the administration has already come forward and saying that if the Senate continues not to follow through and do its job in the passage, that they are leaving open certain options, including going to court to try and get a court order to extend the issue for some of these warrants. So I think they are looking at some options, at least that's what's being reported. But hopefully the Senate will get their act together, and if they have issues with particular language, we'll work together to iron out those differences and get something passed.
In the meantime, we should all still be careful about what we say on our cell phones, right? Come Monday.
Oh,
Just kidding. All right, John Gizzi, Stephen Cobb, thanks so much for being with us on this roundtable.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Always a pleasure.